Hello. This is the quick summary lecture I'm going to give. Uh, Normally, I would have done this melded into one of the classes. There's another one that you're not going to get, which is one of my favorites, but I can't figure out how you could easily be tested on it. So here's the final week, and the theme is punishment. Now, knowing your comprehensive final is coming up, you should be able to operationally define positive and negative reinforcement and positive and negative punishment. Here, most of my examples will be drawn from positive punishment, but things will also apply to negative punishment. And just so you can get in the habit of re-saying the operational definition of punishment. Positive punishment is contingent upon behavior or on behavior. A stimulus is added to the environment, and thus the term positive. You don't have to say that. I'm just reviewing. And the probability of behavior goes down. So let me say that without qualifications. Positive punishment, contingent upon behavior. A stimulus is added to the environment, and the probability of that behavior goes down. I went to the University of Maine. It was a bastion of Skinnerian thinking and behavior modification, and learning theory from that perspective. Skinner was not a fan of punishment. He wanted to do mostly everything using reinforcement, primarily positive reinforcement, little happy faces, and that's a good one. Contingent upon behavior, stimulus is added to the environment, and the probability of behavior goes up. But I think he undervalues punishment, mostly because human society does punishment badly, and parents do punishment badly. But I've got some principles for the effective use of punishment. And here we go. Positive or negative. There was an old television program I really liked, Kung Fu. And when I give lectures, I often when students got an answer correct, I would refer to them as grasshopper. And he died. But there's the master, the blind monk, and he would always give puzzles to Grasshopper for him to solve, and until he left the temple, he learned from Master Po, and then he went off on his own and lived his life. And it was an entertaining show. I liked it. And a phrase from the show that is used fairly widely in society is expect the unexpected. And oh yes, Kung Fu. Caine finally snatches the pebble from from Master Khan. That was his test. If you can snatch the pebble from my hand, you are ready to leave the temple. So hopefully you're getting closer to being able to snatch the pebble. So when wrong tab. When I would teach about punishment, I would be the master, and I would ask you to consider something to help you learn how to effectively punish. And I would start the lecture by drawing a tree. And that still is a good theme. So if you want to know how to effectively punish, consider the tree, grasshopper. And in that process, I want you to think about how much physical punishment, contingent upon behavior, a stimulus is added to the environment, and the probability behavior goes down, how much physical punishment you are threatened with throughout the day. And you don't wake up in the morning paralyzed with fear, saying, there are trees out there, and if I walk into a tree, it will hurt me, and I'm paralyzed by this anxiety. It doesn't happen. It's because trees punish the way things should punish. And you'll see that many of these steps are true in trees. But humans, when they punish, and societies, when they punish, do not do a good job. And remember, punishment is not punishment unless the probability of behavior goes down. If you are hurting someone and not causing a decrease in the probability of behavior, that's not punishment. Not in this class, not in my world. And that's not number one here. The cardinal rule. Don't continue, and notice punishment is in quotes, that doesn't work. Because if punishment doesn't work, the probability of behavior does not go down, and it isn't punishment. It's potentially evil. So when punishment works, you don't have to continue punishing because the behavior that you're trying to suppress is suppressed effectively by the punishment. And so that's number one. And provide very clear rules regarding what behavior will be punished. Now, have you ever at night walked through your world and inadvertently stubbed your toe on the support for your bed or a coffee table, and were surprised to be physically punished? If you're really stupid, that physical punishment you received often causes anger and frustration, and you might kick out at the thing that hurt you, which doesn't work well. And that's because you were surprised. And trees in the daytime don't surprise you. There are very clear cues about the beginning and the ending of a tree. and the tree tells you exactly what not to do. Don't walk into the tree. There was a congressman who was married to Cher at one time, Sonny and Cher. Sonny was skiing, and he skied into a tree. And the tree did what trees do. It really hurt him unto death, and that was that. Now, I'm sure Sonny saw the tree coming up, but he couldn't control himself and skied into the tree. I had a high school friend who drove into a tree at high speed. That didn't work out well either. But something that's an effective stimulus for punishment is very clearly defined. And when that's true, you don't have tree anxiety unless you're skiing or driving at high speed. If you're just walking through the world and there's a tree out there, there's no anxiety, there's no fear. You see the tree, you walk around it, you get on with your day. Stairs, you could open a window and fall out, but you see the window and you don't fall out, and there is no anxiety. Punishment is an extremely effective and from an evolutionary perspective, natural way to control human behavior or animal behavior. And if you do it like nature intended, as the tree intended, there's no anxiety, there's no fear, there's no age regression. You just live with it and you don't even think about it. It's just automatic. One thing trees don't do, number 3, is don't cue when it's safe to emit the response, unless that's part of the package, but not true with trees. You never get to walk through a tree. It's never safe. Now, related to this is the issue of partial punishment schedules. Now, we know there's partial reinforcement schedules, and they affect the pattern of behavior. And we ask you to learn those: FI, FR, VI, VR. I encourage you to think about what would happen if punishment were administered on those schedules. How would that impact on behavior? When this was a regular class, I would have you draw what you predicted, and it was not a pretty picture. Most students could not predict, for example, what an FI punishment schedule would do to the pattern of responding. But think about it, because society has to think about this, because we often cannot punish on a continuous reinforcement schedule, which is an FR1, fixed ratio 1. Every time you do something, there are consequences. But that's the way trees work, and rocks, and they punish you every time. Punishment should be immediate. You walk into a tree, you don't say, "Oh dear, 2 hours from now, that's going to hurt." It hurts right away. And that's in terms of reinforcement, we saw that immediate reinforcement was important, and immediate punishment is important, and it's built into trees and rocks. Punishment should occur with as high a frequency as possible, preferably every time, which is continuous punishment or fixed ratio 1 punishment, just like trees do. Punishment should be as intense as needed to be immediately effective. The tree does not go, "Ooh, maybe you didn't mean that. Here's a little owie. Next time it'll be worse. The punishment is bam. Parents often make this mistake. They feel compassion and they don't punish effectively. And if you don't punish effectively and the probability of behavior is not affected, you're not punishing. And you get a very twisted dynamic in the home. So there are data with rats hitting a lever to get food, so they're on a food reinforcement schedule, and then we overlay on that a shock schedule, a punishment schedule. And if at first you just tickle them with the shock, that may slow down their behavior. In other words, it is punishing, but they adapt to it and they come back, and the probability behavior comes back up. And then you say, okay, more shock, and you turn the shock up, and you get the same pattern again. And then you say more shock, and the pattern repeats again. And finally, you are shocking them with shock that is incredibly intense, and you can probably suppress behavior again. Parents and the criminal justice system sometimes does exactly this. Early punishment is so trivial, it does almost nothing. And all you're doing is training the organism to tolerate little bitty owies with the reinforcement they get for the behavior you're trying to suppress. Don't do it. In the research I would lecture on, in another condition, you don't go to level 1 punishment, the tickle, at first. You go to maybe level 4, and you really zap them. And all it takes is 1 or 2 experiences like that, and the animal's behavior stops. So in the the loving liberal patient who doesn't want to hurt their children, they end up punishing their kids all the time. But they're not punishing because they're not suppressing behavior. Whereas the mean parent who delivers punishment that's effective on the first trial, that's it. Punishment is over. The parents who are trying to be nice often end up being borderline evil. If you're going to use punishment, you better make sure it works. And that relates to number 7. If needed, the intensity of punishment should be increased rapidly. Don't mess around. If you do mess around, you're simply training the organism to live with physical punishment. And again, if the organism is not being suppressed, it's not really punishment. And society does this, parents do this, and it's unethical. Be lawful. Don't change intensity based on your emotional state. Parents do this all the time to their kids. The kids have to become little therapists. They have to figure out, well, what emotional state is the parent in today? Because when they're in a good mood, I can do things and nothing bad happens. But if the parent is in a bad mood, holy cow, I do something inappropriate and the world explodes. They throw me across the room. That is so unethical. You should have rules. You should follow the rules. And whether you're in a bad mood should not affect what you do to your children. Speaking of doing things to children, let's go back to the link I didn't look at or I didn't show you, where you can still beat children in school. Now, this is, I think, from 2014, so this list is probably shortened. It's a list I've given. It's in 2 columns, and there are places you can wail on children in school. And some of these places are not places you'd like to live. And you move to Iran and Iraq, and Sri Lanka, Somalia, the Sudan, Swaziland, Syrian Arab Republic, and we're in that list. These are our peers, and you largely do not find what we would call Western civilizations on this list. And I know it's tradition: spare the rod, spoil the child. Yeah, sure. Um, I this is ethically not uh, something I would aspire to as a country, and most civilized countries don't perceive it as being ethical. Guilt by association. Now where's my link? Here we go. So I remember, in my grade school, physical punishment being delivered. The nuns used to have these pretty substantial rulers, and they would whack your hands. Yeah, that's education. The next one is don't allow unauthorized escape, which is related to something we've already mentioned before. You don't get to walk through trees. Parents sometimes do this. The child will knows that one parent might punish them, but the other doesn't, and wait till your father gets home. Boy, is that a bad idea. And here's another excruciatingly unethical. Number 10, don't turn punishment into positive reinforcement. What the hell are you talking about? Sorry for cursing. You're trying to administer positive punishment contingent upon behavior, stimulus that the environment, and the probability behavior goes down. How do you turn that into positive reinforcement contingent upon behavior? A stimulus is added to the environment, and the probability behavior goes up. In dysfunctional families, this is more common than you would think. So the children learn that if they can cause the parent to blow up and behave inappropriately and really do something emotionally that normally they wouldn't do, that becomes a stimulus that the child will now get something they want. Now they may want something as simple as affection, attention. They may want ice cream. They may want a toy. And they have learned that this parent punishes emotionally. And when they calm down, they feel guilty. And then they give the child something the child wants. In other words, triggering an emotional punishment in the parent. A lot turns really into positive reinforcement. And I've seen this more times than I can count. And here's some factors that you would predict from the course. Reduce motivational state that's driving the undesirable behavior. That if the child wants affection, if the child is hungry, it's it's okay to feed them or hug them. You can reduce the undesirable behavior in society. If people live in a world where they see other people with money and they don't have money, and the only way to get what they want is to do unethical, illegal things, you get a fairly high rate of criminal behavior. I used to go to the CVS or the Turkey Hill up on Mulberry, and the drawer would be open and there'd would be in there, and you'd think about, well, I could reach in, I could take that money, but I don't need to. Um, Bill Gates probably does not steal from grandmothers on the way home, or steal hubcaps off of cars. Uh, his needs are met through ethical behavior. And if you build a society where a reasonable percentage of your population is living in a world where they want things and they can't get them legally, you should not be surprised that they engage in criminal behavior. And I'll tell you, once criminal behavior has been learned in an organism, it's much harder to get rid of. And society has to make a decision. Some views of criminal behavior is you wait until someone does something you don't want, and then you just destroy them. Whereas other people say, let me show you the way. Let me show you how to have a productive life without criminal behavior. And you don't need to punish. Um, so reducing the motivational state, letting your citizens have socially acceptable outlets to gain things they want is much better for society and much better for those people. I firmly believe that society is better off preventing criminal behavior from ever occurring than trying to deal with it after the behavior has been learned. Uh, our criminal justice system has not proven itself to be overly effective at suppressing criminal activity. And in part, it's because these are difficult to do. These are very difficult to do, which means that Skinner was largely right to use positive reinforcement. Uh, and I agree with that, but I don't agree that punishment is not effective. It is effective. It is evolutionarily normal. It doesn't cause terror when it's done effectively, but society and families just do not do it very effectively, and bad things happen. Um, and relevant to 12-13, if possible, provide alternate acceptable behaviors that deliver the same reinforcement as the undesirable behavior. And we have data from rats where if there's only, again, they have a lever and they're on a positive reinforcement schedule. And if they the lever, they get food, and you decide to punish that behavior by shocking the behavior. If there's only one lever and that's their only source of food, boy, you have to use some serious shock to suppress that behavior. It's life and death. It's the only way that they can get their food. Whereas if we set the animal up in a cage with two levers, both of which deliver food, and we pair shock with one lever and not the other, it's over. Very mild shock completely suppresses behavior to the one lever, and they just switch all the behavior over to the other lever. Uh, yeah, if you give people legal ways to get what they want and punish them very effectively for illegal behaviors, they will, without virtually any stress, stress shift to the legal behavior. If possible, put the undesirable behavior on extinction. If the lover no longer delivers food, it's not hard to suppress that behavior. If you have a home environment or a society and you don't want people to do certain things, make it so they don't work anymore. And the organisms can exhibit the behavior, but the behavior doesn't work. And the behavior will stop pretty much on its own, even without punishment. But if you know, add punishment to the behavior, it will really work well. And 15 is, I've been focusing on animal research, and a lot of this book does too. But conditioned aversive stimuli can be very effective as long as they're meaningful, C1 to 5, in guiding appropriate behaviors. And here's news: you can talk to children. You can lay out contingencies. And if you're a lawful parent who says what they mean and does what they say, children aren't stupid. You give them rules, and you are a lawful parent. And if something is something they're not supposed to do, and it's punished, children pretty much are able to understand that they shouldn't do that, and they tend to not to. You should talk to children. You should talk to citizens. You should have a legal system that is easy to understand, like trees, and citizens can follow rules that they can understand, particularly if there are other paths to getting across the meadow without walking into the tree. So I'm going to test on this list and possibly ask you to give examples of some of these 15 points. Society and families, as Skinner believed, are not very good at setting up contingencies, but we should use evidence-based methods to deal with behavior. And if we can't effectively punish, we can't punish every time. For example, and the delay between being caught and really being punished is huge, because the way the criminal justice system has to work for ethical purposes. We need to have a society that deals with behaviors in a different way, and more along the ways that Skinner would have liked. So I want a society that works well. I don't want criminal behavior occurring in my society or in my home. I know punishment can be effective if it's done correctly, but it is very difficult to do it correctly. And if you can't do it correctly and it's not working in this course, you're not punishing. You should be doing something else. You should be looking for ways to encourage appropriate behavior and discourage inappropriate behavior by means of motivational changes and having appropriate behaviors be reinforced. So it's a little idyllic. I am a liberal. I'm out of the closet, and I hate to see laws generated emotionally. I would rather see them generated based on evidence and science, because I want a criminal justice system that doesn't temporarily make me feel good. I want a criminal justice system that works. And it's not easy to do. It really is not. So I hope you can learn something from this list. And I hope you can see that if you can't punish effectively, you probably aren't punishing, and you should look for alternative ways of affecting human behavior. Good luck on the final. it it will look a lot like a bunch of individual quizzes. Sorry, I don't know where the cough is coming from. Break a leg. Good luck. Hopefully, we will meet live someday.